What's up, YouTube? Drew here, and you're at my shop outside with this 2006 Corolla. This is going to apply to all of them from 2003 to 2008. That's the e110, e120 Corolla, and this one has a little bit of funkiness. So when it sits, it cranks and doesn't want to start, but then does on a jump box, which gives me a suspicion of the electrical system. It also has when it's cold, it does that. So it kind of stutters. And, you know, basically there's a couple of reasons for that. And what I want to do with you guys is take you through the diagnosis process. I just arrived at the shop with it, pardon the mess. So we are going to go in here. And the first thing that we're going to do is grab a scan tool and check the fuel trims. I'm gonna take it for a drive and check the fuel trims and see. So my suspicion on the stumbling has to do with it being in a lean condition when it should be rich. So I've explained this in other videos, but when an engine's cold, it needs, it's basically when an engine's running optimally, it should be 14.7 parts air to every 1 part fuel. And if you have, say, 15 parts air to 1 part fuel, that's called lean, too much air, not enough gas. And if you have, say, 10 parts air and 1 part fuel, that's what's called rich, or too much gas and not enough air. Well, when an engine's cold, it needs to run rich, which is why back in the days of carburetor, what the choke would do would be in the tube that the air goes, it would block some of that off, so it manually reduced some of the air while keeping the amount of gasoline constant. In modern cars, they just jack up, they being, you know, the computer, the engineers, the programmers, just jack up the amount of fuel, you know, with the fuel delivery system, the fuel injectors. So what we're gonna do is look at fuel trims. Pardon my camera work here, but we're going to go to, let's see, OBD. This is just a quick scanner. Being the facelifted Corolla, this should be a little faster. For whatever reason, the 03s and 04s were slower. But we're gonna go into what's called live data, and this is a relatively cheap scanner. I think this was like 70 bucks. It's got no codes. All its monitors, looks like all of them are complete. Let's see here. Oh, evap in 02 is not complete. Well, nevertheless, they were when I bought it. So I wanna go to data stream, and we're gonna select items. This could take a while, unfortunately. So fuel system, let's see, short term. Might as well look at the engine coolant temperature too, because that could have something to do with it. Long term, and let's see. So I'm gonna try to set this here. This car is disgusting, by the way. Maybe I'll make you guys a video on detailing the entire thing too. But when this car's cold, again, it sputters, you know, when I blip the throttle, and it sputters even when I drive it. Now that it's warmed up, it's not doing that, which leads me to believe, back to my tangent on fuel, when it's cold, it needs to run rich, or if it doesn't, it will act like it's running lean, right? So let me explain that real quick before we pull out on the road. So if what's required is 14.7 to 1, and you had, say, 16 to 1, which would be really lean, you would get a lean condition, which could be like that sputtering that it does that I showed you. But that's because you're 1.3 higher than you're supposed to be, right? So if you need a 10 to 1 when it's cold, for example, and that's not an exact figure, but you know, when you need to run, say you need to run at 10 to 1, but you're really running at 12 to 1. Well, now, even though you're still richer than you would be at operating temperature, you're lean for the temperature you're at. So my suspicion right off the bat with this car, and again, I have done no diagnosis other than a test drive, my suspicion is that when it's cold, which unfortunately we can't duplicate because the car's warm, my suspicion is that when it's cold, we have a lean condition, but when it warms up, we no longer do. So I'm gonna hammer the throttle. So I mean, those aren't awful fuel trims. So unfortunately with this particular car, you know, we're really not going to be able to get a definite answer, you know, until the car gets cold again, you know, which this time of year, it's 85 degrees out right now. Unfortunately, this time of year, that is going to mean likely overnight. But what we're going to do is we are going to pull these fuel injectors out and we're going to test them. I'm going to show you how to do that. And if they're bad, I'm going to clean them, and I'm going to show you how I do that if they're gunked up, and then we'll test them again after. You guys, of course, can just buy refurbished ones on Rock Auto, or I'm sure if you do some Googling and you're in a somewhat decent-sized metro area, there's probably a fuel injection service place around you. You could send them out for that. That's if I'm right. If I pull out these injectors and they all have a nice even fan, well, then we're in a bit of a pickle. But stand by. We're going to look at the injectors. We're also going to pull the spark plugs and look at those. So it comes down to a couple really basic things. An engine needs to make compression, which you can do a compression check too. But an engine needs to make compression. It needs fuel. It needs air. It needs spark. And all the timing needs to be correct. We'd have codes if any of those things were really, really, really far out. And as you've seen in my Prius videos, if you're a subscriber, and if you are a subscriber, thank you, that, you know, there's sometimes these cars can, not so much these Corollas, but the Prius, especially the second generation, will give you like that morning death knock, and then it goes away when the car warms up. And it's in many cases with the second gens, it's fuel injectors. Sadly, with the third gens, it's blown head gaskets. But it's the same, I suspect the same thing here. We have a fuel injector that can perform when what's required is 14.7 to 1, but it cannot perform when, say, 10 to 1, much richer, much more fuel is required. So we're going to look at these fuel injectors and their spray pattern. We're going to go from there. So in my digging, like I said, I'm going to pull out the fuel injectors and test them, and I'm going to take a look at the spark plugs, see how they are. Might as well, because I'm in here, replace the known issue. I have one on the floor there from last week. That is a brittle intake manifold gasket on these. Going to deal with that, and look at the throttle body. It's pretty bad. So this is a 2006 Corolla. The earlier models had a cable-driven. You'd notice it, a big cable coming over to it in the little half wheel that the cable pulls. This is an electronic throttle body, so you don't want to touch it, you don't want to mess with it. What I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put the car in the run position, obviously not try to start it, right? And I'm going to use this pedal depressor to hold the throttle wide open, and I'm going to clean that without touching it and disturbing it. So once I've checked my fuel injectors, once I've checked my spark plugs, and I button all this back up, I know I'm not going to have an issue with air delivery, because I'm going to clean that stuff as well. So that is basically the gist of where I'm at. I'm going to show you guys what I find with the spark plugs and fuel injectors, and then the big thing, and make sure you stay tuned, I am going to fire this girl up. Usually it's after the needle starts to move, the temperature needle. Once it's warmed up for, I'd say, maybe 3 minutes or so, is when the hesitation and the stutter comes. So the fact that when it's ice cold it doesn't do it, and the fact that when it's warmed up it doesn't do it, that tells me that I definitely don't have like worn out piston rings or valves or a stretch timing chain. It's either the spark, the fuel, or the air, which is, again, a little bit of a spoiler. You kind of got to know these things to do these diagnoses, but that's why I'm walking you guys through the entire thing. So as I'm, gabbing on about what I'm finding with my car and what I suspect and what I don't, and more importantly, why I do or don't, you guys can be kind of bouncing that off of your situation, and hopefully this helps diagnose your issue. If it's been helpful yet at any point, it's not too early to give it a thumbs up, and if you like my style, it's not too early to subscribe. But hang in there, we're going to get a little bit deeper into this girl and figure out why she is tripping, no pun intended. Thought you guys would like this. You hear that buzzing sound? You see that throttle's open? Look at how disgusting that is in there. We're gonna clean that up as best we can without disturbing that plate. But that is just simply the pedal depressor flooring the car, and the throttle, the electric throttle, doing its thing. So I've got some cleaner here. I'm gonna get that handled up on. All right, so just a quick little shot of the intake manifold gasket. That's the new one in place. This really sucks because it kind of has to pop in there, but it's not a tight enough fit to really stay in. The old one wasn't awful. Definitely, not as, I've had these literally like crumble apart in my hands. I cleaned up the mating surface a little bit. I'm going to shoot a separate video real quick here and put it in the description, just some tips and tricks for doing this job because it's not as straightforward as it looks. But so far I've got the throttle body cleaned and the intake manifold gasket done, and nothing really jumped out at me that would cause the symptoms that we saw in the beginning. So on to the fuel injectors and the spark plugs. Again, this video is more for folks that don't have the ability to do like a crazy, you know, $3,000 snap-on scanner diagnosis, all that jazz. And it's kind of like, okay, I've got an issue in the process of doing an overhaul tune-up type thing without a lot of money, you know, spark plugs, possibly fuel injectors, and an intake manifold gasket, couple cans of cleaner. The issue should reveal itself. So that's the goal here still. And just so you know, this far in, my issue has not directly jumped out. There was a horrible ridge where the plate inside that throttle body moves. I mean, there was a ridge I could feel with my fingernail, which could be it. You know, it doesn't explain why that thing would hang up when the car's not ice cold and not warm, but just while it's warming up. Possible, yes, expansion and contraction. It could be like just the right time in that process. I'm not sure, whatever. We will see. But yeah, I just wanted to tell you guys about this, and definitely check the description for a little bit more in depth about the intake manifold gasket. This is where I might lose some of you, but hang in there. This thing was super cheap, and what that does is it basically hooks up to a fuel injector and it provides a pulse. Just like an engine does. So a fuel injector has constant pressure going in the backside of it, and then the computer in the car tells it tap, 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 tap voltage when to spray instead of a carburetor. So what I've got here is a little gizmo that hooks up to a can of throttle body or carburetor cleaner, and the other end hooks up to the fuel injector, and then pressure from just the can goes through it, and then a pulsation from this allows me to see what the fan of that fuel injector looks like. And I'm going to try to show you guys that if I can find a way to work the camera and do it. But the gist of it is I can also take that little guy, the fuel injector, and drop it in a machine that will clean it inside, outside, and underneath, whatever, while there is that voltage tapping it. So I'm going to test all 4 of the fuel injectors, and I'm going to clean any of them that are necessary to be clean, and then that eliminates that. And if all these look good, the only thing I have left to check is, of course, spark. So on a modern car, it's tough to check. I mean, you're replacing plugs and packs, basically. Diagnosing them if you can. But the average person is only going to be able to replace. So, stay tuned. And like I said, if I'm losing you, just know this is cheap. Yes, you have to pause the project and buy it on Amazon because there's nowhere in the world that has that on a shelf. But just, hang in there and make the investment. And I'm certain if you get through this yourself, you're going to spend way, 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 way less than paying a professional. And you're going to feel much better about yourself when you do. Okay, so basically what we've got here is what's called an ultrasonic cleaning machine. And what it's doing is it's putting intense vibrations through a heated solution of degreaser, just simply purple power, while the fuel injector is tapping, open and close like it actually is in the car when you're driving down the road. So what's happening is the heated degreaser and the ultrasonic vibrations are cleaning inside the fuel injector as the little gizmo that I linked on Amazon is opening and closing it in a way that won't burn it out. I found about 5 to 10 minutes per fuel injector, which seems like forever when you're listening to the horrible screeching sound of the ultrasonic cleaner and basically running a fuel injector outside of an engine at about the equivalent of 1,000 RPMs. But that is all it takes to get these cleaned. So again, about 5 to 10 minutes per injector, and this should free up anything inside of them. Okay, so this part's a little bit rigged, but stick with me. I'm going to fill as much as I can to the top of the, the head of the fuel injector with a cleaner, and I'm going just basically carburetor cleaner, and I'm going to run it until it goes down. Watch. So there they are, filled to the top. We're going to go over here and just turn on the pulse, and you can watch the level drop, and you can see it drip out the bottom. So that's one more time of cleaning them, one more method, getting the soap out, and so on. Okay, so the spark plugs didn't reveal anything specifically about them that would say that they were a problem, but they did reveal that potentially somebody else knew about this problem. Maybe that's why this car was ditched. and tried spark plugs. These don't look that old. It is buttoned up with new ones. I see there's a coil pack replaced. Maybe somebody did like a misfire counter and, you know, pinpointed a specific cylinder. At this point, I believe that the issue would have been solved in the fuel injection area, which is, of course, all buttoned back up. But the purpose of this video, again, was to walk you guys through how, without a, you know, several $1,000 oscilloscope and everything, you know, snap-on scan, without all the crazy tools DIYers just don't have and can't justify buying, how to go through this car and diagnose it while kind of giving it a tune-up. This is not a parts cannon. The only parts we threw at this car was a $6 intake manifold gasket and spark plugs, which should be done anyways, and they're cheap enough. What we did is we went through and, you know, for you that don't even want to invest in the $30 worth of tools and the $80 or whatever it cost parts cleaner to clean your fuel injectors, you could get rebuilt ones or get ones from a junkyard on a known, you know, little tip about the junkyard. When you see a car that looks like it was well taken care of and all the airbags are blown out, because it was smashed, there's a good chance that, you know, the transmission and the engine were working properly because it had to be going down the road to get in that accident. Is there a chance that that was a bad car ready to die and it just happened to get hit? Sure, but it's more likely that they didn't have problems if it's a car that looks like it was well taken care of and it was in an accident when it got put in the junkyard. So maybe go get fuel injectors out of the junkyard. Point is, for those of you that don't have the ability to, you know, diagnose with thousands of dollars worth of tools and years and years and years and years of experience, this is a good way to go through and look at why would a car sputter like that. It's either a fuel, air, timing, compression, or spark issue. And again, I said earlier in the video, I don't believe it to be timing or compression because it's fine when it's ice cold and it's fine when it's warm. So what we're going to do now, I left this one bolt here I got to tighten up, and then I'm going to get in the car, start it up, and I will report back to you guys from that status and let you know if this was a success or if there's more digging to be done. I don't believe in luck. I don't believe in jinxing, so I'm just going to say I think I got it. I believe it was a dirty fuel injector, which would explain why somebody chased the ignition system. The fuel injectors are often overlooked. I believe that was it. I'm going to fire it up and we'll go from there. Okay, so I did everything I could to keep all the cleaner and stuff out of the intake ports on the cylinder head and the throttle body and all that jazz so it doesn't give us a hard time starting it. If you're watching this, again, these videos are for entertainment purposes, of course, but if you're doing this same repair and watching this for any kind of reference, do know that obviously if you flood your engine with, you know, or dump a decent amount of cleaner into your engine, it's going to have a hard time starting. This one shouldn't. We'll see in a moment. I have it on a jump box, unfortunately, because I know I wore down the battery. But I'm going to fire this up, and we're going to let it get to that point where, you know, the temperature gauge is starting to move, and I'm going to blip the throttle a bunch of times, see if the problem's gone, and get it out on the road for a road test. Had to build some fuel pressure. It should find its idle. We'll take that jump box off. Sometimes you can help it by putting it in drive. Yeah, that's raging a little bit. But it'll learn its idle. Gonna be back with you in a little bit once it's at the right temperature for some of those throttle blips. All right, here we are. I reset the idle. That's easy. Took the two battery cables off, touched them to each other, and now it's going to relearn its idle position. There is a very good chance this has to do with that buildup in that throttle body, that it was resting on it and now it's not, but you know, know what? Next step, folks, I'm gonna go get a license plate and take this girl for a ride. Here we are on our test. I had a little camera issue a moment ago, but the blip, it's gone. I was able to feel it pretty severely when I drove the car at the temperature range that I'm at now and lower before. And again, I do realize that I don't have for you guys a solid answer why it did that, but the point of this video, and I really hoped you like it, again, it's never too early to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. The concern was, well, it's really tough to diagnose for the average person, especially a DIYer. There's no codes, and it's not bad enough to cause any codes. So I took you guys through all the possible reasons a car could do that. All this job required was basic tools and maybe $120 investment between Amazon and Harbor Freight at most for that ultrasonic cleaner and the pulsator for the spark plugs. Now, instead of the ultrasonic cleaner, you can have a helper keep spraying carburetor cleaner through the fuel injector while you tap 12 volts with just a battery and a couple alligator clips. That's fine. You know, but the reality is that's not a lot of money. That's about an hour's labor, and I'm being, you know, I'm saying a little bit more than I think it actually costs. It was like $70 for one thing and $20 for the other, so you're $90. Most mechanics that are reputable and will be able to handle a job like this are about $120 an hour in my part of the country, and in areas like Los Angeles and New York City pushing $200 at the time of filming. So what we have here is we went through, it's kind of like if your doctor told you, hey, you're in overall bad health, you know, you're overweight, you can't run a mile. Well, you know, gosh, doc, is it the cheese or the ribeye steaks or the hot dogs or the cigarettes or the over drinking or whatever it is? If you go through and you say, okay, we got a problem, we don't know exactly what it is, but we're going to address everything that needs to be done anyways and look for the issue in the process, which is what I did. This was a happy ending. I do want you guys to know there's a possibility that if you screw something up, one of these many things, and then you get a condition where it doesn't start or the problem gets much worse, unfortunately, you have quite a to-do to figure out what that was because you touched multiple things. But what I wanted to do in this video was take you guys through and show you exactly how to handle this with the bare minimum. And I hope I did that. I hope you liked the video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. Definitely subscribe to the channel. I do stuff like this as much as I can. These Corollas are bulletproof cars, and you know, look at that. All it took was, you know, in my case, a set of spark plugs and an intake manifold gasket, couple cans of carburetor cleaner, and it's like a new car. It even idles way smoother. So, again, I'm Drew. Listen, guys, if I could fix it, you could fix it. God bless you. Hang in there. And as long as you're subscribed, we'll see you on the next video. Take care. Bye.